This anime is entitled Kimo no Suizo wo Tabetai, also known as I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. It sounds creepy, but it's actually a pretty sad movie. It tells about a high school girl named Sakura Yamachi, who has a terminal pancreatic disease. She is hiding about her condition from all her classmates except someone named Haruki Shiga. It happens because Haruki accidentally sees Sakura's diary that wrote about this deadly illness. The movie opens with a funeral scene of a high school girl named Sakura Yamachi that makes her friends sad, including Haruki Shiga. He is Sakura's classmate and her closest friend. The scene moves back to the past. At the hospital, Haruki was waiting for his turn until he saw a book lying on the floor. He picked it up and it turned out it was someone's diary that wrote about her pancreatic disease. While reading the book, suddenly there was a girl saying it belonged to her. The girl is Sakura. Because she knew Haruki had read her book, she explained that she had a terminal pancreatic disease and only had a few months left to live. Instead of being surprised or feeling sorry for her, Haruki showed a casually flat expression. Seeing his reaction, Sakura wasn't mad. Instead, she laughed to find someone who responded to her story casually. Suddenly, Haruki's number was called, and he walked towards the administrator. By then, their conversation ended. On the other hand, Sakura was still curious about him and she decided to follow him. Besides wanted to get closer to him, she asked him to keep her secret from their classmates. He didn't find it difficult since he didn't have any friends. Haruki thought their meeting would end right there. However, Sakura enrolled to become a librarian where Haruki was also a librarian. Thus they ended up spending a lot of time together. She continued approaching him even though he didn't show any interest in her at all. Because she was a cheerful and very confident person, Sakura made a list of activities she wanted to do before she died. However, Sakura wanted to do it with Haruki because he was the only one who was aware of her illness. Although he actually refused it, Sakura didn't give up until he finally granted one of her wishes to eat her favorite food at a restaurant. While they were eating, Haruki talked about a TV show he watched before about ancient people who ate belly if their stomach hurt, or ate guts if their intestines hurt. Sakura said she wanted to eat his pancreas to cure her illness. As usual, Haruki responded to her jokes with a flat expression. After that, Sakura asked him why he didn't have friends because she found him quite a fun person. Haruki said that people thought him a boring person, although it was just his guess. Haruki was a person who always guesses what others think of him. Hearing this, Sakura advised Haruki to open up because his opinion might not be the same as reality. As the proof, Sakura didn't think he was boring. After lunch, they accidentally saw an old woman who was hit by a bicycle in an environment where bicycles were not supposed to pass. However, the man blamed the old woman for standing in the middle of the road. Many people around saw the incident but no one helped. Didn't want to get involved in that troublesome thing. Haruki took Sakura to get home. Instead of going away, Sakura came closer to help the old woman. She confidently confronted the man and said it was his fault for passing the area with bicycle. She said she would report this matter because she believed that he would be proven guilty. In the middle of the debate, the patrol police came. To end their debate, she kicked him hard and ran from that place with Haruki. They stopped in front of a cafe called Spring Cafe. Sakura thought it suited to her since the name matched to her name. At the cafe, Sakura asked Haruki's phone number. It seemed she was being serious about asking Haruki to accompany her until she died. The next morning, Haruki felt that his classmates were watching him, causing him to feel uncomfortable. It turned out the rumor about their proximity had spread. It came from the video of the incident in front of the store when Sakura helped the old woman. Sakura's classmates didn't agree that Sakura was close to him because they thought Haruki was a gloomy guy who had no future. It was better for her to be close to the chairman of the class, Takahiro. He was smart, handsome, and reputable student. Sakura's best friend, Kyoko, also agreed with that. She didn't like Haruki from the very beginning. At the library, Haruki asked Sakura to stop coming near him because he didn't like to attract the attention. Hence this time, Haruki refused her invitation to carry out her wish list. But as usual, Sakura managed to get Haruki to accompany her having lunch at the cafe she wanted. Kyoko saw them at the cafe and it annoyed her. She immediately approached them and asked Sakura if they were dating. Sakura denied that and replied that Haruki was her close friend. Because her friends were waiting outside, Kyoko took her statement for granted and left them. After she left, Sakura explained Kyoko's strict attitude since middle school. However, Sakura hoped that someday Haruki could be friends with her because she was actually a very nice person. From the cafe, they spent the time enjoying the sunset on the coast. Haruki asked the reason Sakura hid her condition from Kyoko. She explained that she didn't want to see people around her sad. Besides, they would overreact and made things not normal and turn things unpleasant. Therefore, she chose Haruki because only he could give her normalcy when he was aware with her condition. That evening, Haruki received a message from Sakura inviting him to go on a trip. He was clueless about her plan, thus he brought meager utilities. When they met at the train station, he found Sakura was carrying her luggage. It turned out she planned to go on a quite far place and they were going to stay at hotel. On the train, Haruki asked how he got permitted by her parents. Apparently, she asked her parents to let her go on a trip with Kyoko, and her parents would voluntarily accept it when she said it was her last wish. She opened her diary and asked him his first name because until this moment she didn't know it. He mentioned his name, but he asked her not to write it down because he didn't want her parents and friends to question him after she died. Hearing that, Sakura turned her head and smiled. Arriving at Hakata train station, they began enjoying their trip. They enjoyed local foods, visited tourist attractions, and went shopping for Haruki because he didn't bring spare clothes. After that, they went to the hotel where they would stay at night. Haruki accepted all of her plans. He even had to agree staying at the same room with her. Because the room only had one bed, Haruki decided to sleep on the couch. Shortly, when Sakura had showered, she asked Haruki to get her face wash. He opened her luggage and was surprised to find numerous medicines in her luggage. Afterwards, he realized that Sakura was really suffering from her illness. Then after Haruki finished taking shower, Sakura had ordered many snacks. Spending the night, Haruka suggested playing Truth or Daring. During the game, they always chose truth, and they finally told story of each other's lives. But Haruki's question was hard and boring. Because it was too boring, Sakura challenged Haruki to choose Dare. The challenge was to carry her to bed, and Haruki immediately carried her to bed. She was happy, and now it was her turn. Haruki asked her to choose Truth or Dare, but when he looked at her, he found she was sleeping, and he went to turn off the lights. But when the lights have turned off, Sakura suddenly said she would choose Truth. She said she was actually afraid of dying. After that, it was Haruki's turn to choose, and this time he chose Dare. Hearing his reply, Sakura asked him to sleep on the bed. Then finally that night, they ended up sleeping on the same bed. The next morning, Sakura received a call from Kyoko. Kyoko scolded her for lying to her parents about going on a trip with her. Fortunately, Kyoko was able to cover her up, and Kyoko suspected that she was going with Haruki. Kyoko said she demanded an explanation after she got home. Since their trip together, Haruki started waiting for a message from Sakura, and he felt his life boring if she didn't ask him to go somewhere. At school, as she had promised, Kyoko approached Haruki and asked him why Sakura chose him over her to accompany her. Haruki tried to keep Haruka's secret by keeping quiet even though Kyoko cursed Haruki many times. Kyoko asked him to stay away from Sakura if he was just playing around. Furthermore, she said that Sakura was fragile. She could quit eating and gloomy all day if broken-hearted. And if thing happened, Kyoko would not stay silent. At the library, Sakura asks Haruki who was late. Haruki covered it up by saying that he had had a business. Sakura discussed about what they would do after school. She had planned to invite him to go outside, but since it was raining, she made up her mind and invited him to her house because there was no one at home, and she had an interesting book. Haruki, who was a book lover, became curious and wanted to borrow it. Finally, they arrived at her house. She invited him to play game. During the gameplay, Sakura again asked Haruki to make friends with others, who knew he would get a girlfriend. Talking about girlfriend, Sakura said whatever happened to them, it would not change their relation. As the conversation ran here and there, Haruki decided to pick the book and go home. When he was selecting the books, suddenly Sakura hugged him from behind. She said it was her other wish before she died. She wanted to do naughty things with someone who was not her boyfriend. Sakura tried to kiss him, and when he was about to fall for it, Sakura turned her heels and laughed out loud, saying she was joking around. However, Haruki didn't find it amusing at all. He pushed her on the bed, stared at her. Sakura was scared seeing Haruki, and she cried. Haruki then came to his sense and he rushed to leave her. Outside, he felt guilty, and on the same time, he met Takahiro. Takahiro forced him to confess about his relationship with Sakura. He wondered if they were not dating, then why they always spent time together and even went on a trip together. He forcefully asked him to say the truth. However, Haruki remained silent and chose to keep going. Takahiro was annoyed and punched him hard. Suddenly Sakura came up and she panicked seeing Haruki fall. Then it's revealed that Takahiro was her ex-boyfriend who was always overprotective to her. Takahiro said he just wanted to help her away from a gloomy guy like Haruki. Hearing that, she was angry and scolded him, saying he was worse like trash who was always looking down on people. She asked him to leave immediately. After he left, Haruki admitted his regret being close to her, because since that he always engaged in a trouble. He thought it was better for him to be alone than hurt anyone. Sakura replied that their relation just happened, that it could even be called as fate. Her diary connected both of them because through the diary, Sakura finally found someone who knew her condition without overreacting with her. She asked him to wait and stay with her a little longer. Because he was all wet from the rain, she asked him to go inside to change. Haruki agreed and he changed his clothes with hers. After that, Sakura lent her book to him with condition he must return it before a year and keep their friendship. Since that day, Haruki granted all her wishes. They enjoyed their day happily. He was just granted half of her wishes when suddenly Sakura was admitted to the hospital. Haruki was afraid and it realized him that she was not alright. Haruki paid her visit at the hospital and found her dancing in her room. Sakura was embarrassed, but Haruki felt relieved because she still showed her cheerfulness. Her classmates also heard about her being hospitalized, but she said she was having appendix surgery. They played truth or dare in one round. Haruki asked her an important question about the meaning of living. She answered that living meant the connection with each other between humans. Love, like, hate, hug, and hold others were forms of life. Her answer touched him and he praised her. She walked and hugged him. This time it was not joking. Lately, Sakura wanted to feel others' warmth. When they were hugging, suddenly Kyoko appeared. To hold Kyoko's anger, who was annoyed seeing her and Haruki together, Sakura immediately hugged her and Haruki left the room. Days have passed. Suddenly Haruki got a message from Sakura telling her treatment would be extended for 2 weeks. After school, Haruki visited her. Considering her condition, he was haunted by nervousness and he was afraid of losing her. Sakura invited him to go the hill behind the hospital. There, he confessed his concern and he hoped she would live on. Sakura was happy to find someone who truly cared for her, especially it was Haruki. She promised to tell him if her time came. When she said that, suddenly the fireworks lit up in the distance. It turned out this was her wish to watch fireworks with him because they failed to go on the summer festival. While watching the fireworks, Sakura asked him to hug her as a gratitude for carrying her. Haruki hugged her, and she promised to invite him to the beach after she discharged from the hospital. It made Haruki hesitate because he was afraid it might be a farewell. Fortunately, it was not. Not long after that, Sakura was discharged and they planned to meet at her favorite cafe, Spring Cafe. There, he sat waiting for her. While waiting for her, he remembered the first time he met her. It was a blessing for him because since he knew her, he was more willing to interact with others. He even wanted to become like her. Sakura sent him a message, telling she was about to go to the cafe. Haruki replied he wanted to eat her pancreas, a joke from their past conversation. Time had passed, but until late afternoon there was no news from Sakura, and even until the cafe closed, Sakura didn't show up. Disappointed, finally Haruki went home. At dinner time, Haruki checked his phone but there was no message from her. Suddenly there was a news about the murder case of a high school girl in the neighborhood, and the victim was Sakura Yamachi. Haruki was shocked to hear that. The incident happened this afternoon, so it was the reason she didn't show up at the cafe. Haruki was devastated. He even couldn't come to her funeral. He beamed and read books in his room, including Sakura's book that he borrowed. 10 days after her death, Haruki had calmed down and he decided to go to her house to pay her last honor. After praying for her, he apologized Sakura's mother for just coming to the house. He told her that all this time he knew about her illness, and if allowed, he wanted to read her diary. Hearing that, her mother cried and thanked him. She finally knew the person Sakura meant. Turned out far before her death, Sakura had asked her mother to give her diary to a certain person who knew about her illness. She even guessed that he might not come to her funeral, but she believed that he would come. Receiving the diary, Haruki read her story about their time together, about his quiet but attractive character. She even wrote about the incident when Haruki scared her off. Besides that, she also wrote about her heart that lately she always cried alone, especially at night. Her diary ended at the day she discharged from the hospital. When he was going to return the diary, Sakura's mother said there was a note for him at the back. He found a note that started with line, "Especially for you whose name didn't want to be written." Turned out Sakura granted his wish for not writing down his name. By her letter, Sakura gave her diary to him, and it's up to him to tell everyone about the note because in the diary, it's not just about him. Later, Sakura confessed she was attracted to him long before their meeting at the hospital. Their personalities were complete opposites, but their closeness made her happy because they completed each other. Frankly speaking, she had fallen in love with him, but she was afraid to confess it. Their relationship was more than friendship and love. She really admired him. From many people passing by his life, Sakura was happy because he chose to be with her. She had been waiting for 17 years and his presence was a figure she was waiting for all this time. After reading her warm letter, Haruki sank into tears of sorrow. After that, Haruki mustered his courage to call Kyoko to tell her about Sakura's illness. In disbelief, Kyoko slapped him why he had given the secret. She thought he was lying, and Haruki gave her Sakura's diary to convince her. Kyoko read the diary. Pages by pages made her cry and couldn't believe what she was reading. After reading the diary, Kyoko was still upset with Haruki because he kept secret from her. If he had told her, she might have spent time with her more often. Kyoko left while saying that she would never forgive him. After she left, Haruki decided to after her and said he understood her anger. However, he hoped that someday she can forgive him and they can be friends. From his statement, it's seen that Haruki has made progress in his life. And 1 year later, Haruki finally befriends with Kyoko and others. He tries to be an open person like Sakura. Hey, thank you for staying all the way till the end. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. It takes only a second, but it means everything to us. Have a great day and see you next time.